Imagine a king standing on a high mountain, watching his army get absolutely routed in the valley below. He can see it with his own eyes, the lines breaking, the panicked retreat. It's a complete disaster. But then, as the dust settles, his war strategist scrambles up the mountain to his side, panting, and congratulates him on the glorious victory. What on earth is happening here? Is the strategist delusional? Or just a sycophant trying to keep his head? According to the philosopher Hegel, the truth is something far more bizarre. The strategist isn't necessarily lying, and the king isn't being fooled. The technical details of the battle, the actual winning or losing, are almost irrelevant. What matters is that the king remains the king. This odd little story isn't just a historical anecdote. It's a key that unlocks one of the weirdest and most profound ideas about leadership, authority, and the strange performance that is power. In fact, it leads to an even stranger conclusion. The only person who is truly mad in a kingdom is the king who actually believes he's the king. So on this deep dive, we're going to explore these, well, frankly, bizarre and profound ideas about power, legitimacy, and what it truly means to lead. We're going to unpack this concept of symbolic authority, dive into some truly hilarious philosophical critiques, and then kind of flip the script to see how even the idea of a leader's weakness is becoming a strange new strength today. All right. Let's unpack this king situation first. How on earth can a leader suffer such a clear defeat? I mean, everyone saw it, and still be celebrated as a victor. It really is like winning by losing.
It's fascinating, isn't it? The central insight here, from Hegel's perspective anyway, is that the true power isn't derived from the battle's outcome, or even the king's actual competence, really.
Okay, so where does it come from then?
It resides in the collective belief. A leader's authority, their legitimacy, it stems from what people believe to be right and true about their rule, not necessarily from objective success or, their skill set.
So the king is the king because everyone agrees he's the king, even if he just, I don't know, tripped over his own crown 5 minutes ago. That's wild.
It sounds a bit like fake it till you make it, I suppose.
Yeah, but is it just faking it or is something else going on?
Well, it raises that important question. How do societies reach a shared truth of how their community should be shaped? It's often through symbols and shared
symbols like flags, anthems, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Symbols are absolutely crucial to political language. They help build a community's identity and, importantly, a shared sense of legitimacy. The king and the strategist in that story, they're performing this symbolic reality. They're reinforcing it.
Ah, okay. So it's a performance. That makes me think of those, cults of personality we sometimes see in politics, where leaders become almost superhuman figures. Tell us a bit more about that connection.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, many historical and, modern leaders demonstrate this symbolic power. You mentioned cults of personality. Think about figures like, say, Benito Mussolini in Italy.
Right. The deuce is always right.
Precisely. That saying became common. Or look at Narendra Modi in India, who some supporters have described as well superhuman or having traces of God.
Wow.
Even Adolf Hitler, the propaganda, depicted him as Germany's almighty defender and savior. Now, these aren't just about personal charm, right? It involves the deliberate construction of an image, propaganda, public performance, all of it.
So they're not just leading, they're almost becoming a symbol themselves. It's like their actual human self takes a back seat to the idea of what they represent.
That's a very good way to put it. The person becomes secondary to the symbol they embody.
Okay, speaking of leaders becoming symbols, the philosopher Marx, he had some choice words for Hegel's idea of the monarch, didn't he? He basically laughed at it.
Oh, Marx offered a wonderfully sharp critique, really quite pointed. He saw the Hegelian monarch as so alienated, so disconnected from his true self.
Alienated how?
Alienated because he's so utterly consumed by the state's abstract idea of sovereignty. Marx argued he became nothing more than an appendix to his own biological function.
An appendix, like the organ.
Well, yeah, that's part of the imagery. Marx even sarcastically concludes, and this is pretty vivid, that the Hegelian monarch is nothing more than an appendix to his penis.
Okay, that's quite the visual.
It is, isn't it? A rather blunt way to make his point.
So the king's ultimate act of state, according to Marx's critique of Hegel, is basically procreation, just keeping the bloodline going.
That's the implication in Marx's sarcastic jab, yes. That's the price, the absurd reduction that comes with embodying the state's abstract sovereignty in that specific Hegelian sense.
And this whole idea of a person becoming an appendix to a larger system, wow, that really hits home, doesn't it?
Indeed, and it raises that fundamental question. What happens to individual agency? What happens to your true self when you're just, subsumed into a large, rigid system?
Yeah.
Marx's broader critique of alienation is highly relevant here. He argued that in certain systems, capitalism was his main focus. Of course, individuals are stripped of control over their work, their production, even their own human nature. They become mere instruments.
Like a factory worker on an assembly line, maybe?
Exactly. That's a classic example. They might never see the finished product, have no say in the process, feel entirely interchangeable. That feeling of disconnect, of powerlessness, that's alienation.
And this isn't just about kings, right? This idea of losing yourself to the system, becoming an appendix or a cog, that feels very modern too. Does it apply to, say, big bureaucracies today?
Oh, absolutely. The concept of alienation, though it originated with Marx, has definitely evolved. It's often used now to describe the dehumanizing effects within contemporary organizations.
Oh, sus.
Think about highly centralized bureaucratic states, or even huge corporations. Individuals can easily experience a loss of autonomy. They can feel reduced to mere cogs in vast machines.
Because of all the rules and procedures?
Precisely. Rigid rules, complex procedures.
Yeah.
They can limit your ability to make decisions, to exercise personal initiative, to feel like you're actually contributing something meaningful as yourself.
So whether you're a king who's just an appendix to his crown, or maybe an employee today who feels like a tiny cog, it's all about losing your real self to the system. Sounds a bit soul-crushing, frankly.
It can certainly feel that way.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, as you said, how many people feel like they're just an appendix to their job title or their role in some big machine.
Okay, so we started with this king whose reality was totally detached from his supposed victory. Now let's talk about a more surprising shift, something happening in modern leadership.
Okay.
We seem to be seeing a move away from that traditional, infallible, super charismatic leader type. I keep hearing terms like vulnerability and humility being talked about as actual strengths. How does that fit in? It almost sounds like admitting weakness is suddenly good.
It's a really crucial shift, you're right. The contemporary understanding of leadership is indeed challenging those older norms. Historically, humility wasn't exactly celebrated in, say, business leadership. It was often seen as, well, not strong enough.
Yeah, exactly.
But studies now strongly suggest that humble leaders tend to be more emotionally stable, modest, and this is key, far more eager to learn and adapt.
So it's not about being this stoic, all-knowing figure anymore, but about being, well, human, acknowledging you don't have all the answers. This is where it gets really interesting for me.
Precisely. One CEO at a recent event put it beautifully. He said the crucial issue isn't really about being humble or vulnerable in a way that implies weakness. It's about building trust and maybe even adaptive capacity.
Adaptive capacity. How does vulnerability help with that?
Well, think about it. In a world that's constantly changing, full of disruption, a leader who admits uncertainty, who says, I don't know, let's figure this out together, doesn't necessarily project weakness. Instead, it signals openness. Openness to new information, to different perspectives, to distributed problem solving.
Okay, I see. So the vulnerability allows the whole team or organization to learn and pivot faster.
Exactly. It can make them far more resilient than relying on a single all-knowing leader could ever be. For example, maintaining a no-surprise culture, being transparent, sharing both good news and bad news that fosters robust, open discussions. It builds trust.
So, okay, instead of hiding perceived weaknesses or imperfections, like our king at the beginning, trying to ignore the lost battle, or what some philosophical traditions might even call a metaphorical castration, a fundamental lack modern leaders are supposed to lean into them.
That's a really insightful way to frame it, yes. The concept of imperfection, or even that philosophical idea of castration or inherent lack, it's being reframed. It's not seen as just a weakness anymore, but potentially as a driver for authentic engagement in leadership development.
A driver? How?
Well, the idea is that recognizing this imperfection should create a demand for desiring for action. It motivates you. Leaders who can acknowledge their vulnerabilities, admit they don't have all the answers, and adapt their style accordingly. They're actually far better equipped for today's really complex business environment.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about someone like Satya Nadella at Microsoft. He really champions empathy, a human-centered approach. He understands that these so-called soft skills listening, learning, empowering others are actually hallmarks of incredibly effective modern leadership. It's about fostering that collective intelligence.
So it sounds like the pendulum has swung pretty far from the maybe mad king who actually believes his own hype and thinks he's perfect to the effective modern leader who knows they're not.
That seems to be the direction, yes.
Right.
It's almost like in today's world, if you try too hard to hoard power and project this image of perfect, infallible control,
It backfires.
it can, yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least it's less effective. Empowering others, being open about limitations, fostering collaboration that seems to be increasingly seen as the truly influential way to achieve real transformational change.
So after exploring kings who are only kings because everyone believes they are, leaders who are just an appendix to the state, and now modern managers who might actually lead better by embracing their own vulnerabilities, it really seems the whole performance of power is far stranger and maybe more flexible than we often imagine.
It certainly is complex, and it keeps evolving.
Yeah. The ultimate lesson might just be that believing you are king and truly being an effective leader can be two entirely different and sometimes equally absurd things.